All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Bill Reed, your home building coach, and welcome to episode 53 of the Awakened Homeowner. And this is season 2, the beginning of season 2. And I'll be honest with you, when I recorded that very first episode, I wasn't entirely sure where this thing was going. I had the book, I had the mission, but you never really know if what you're putting out is landing until people start reaching out and telling you it is. 53 episodes later, I'm sitting here with a book in the world, a planning platform called BuildQuest, and beta testing, and an audience of homeowners who are actually putting this stuff to work. I'm watching from month to month, from week to week. The listeners are growing almost twice or double each week. So it seems to be catching fire here. And man, is that exciting, and that really means everything to me. So before we go any further, I just want to thank all of you out there who are listening, and I would love to just keep hearing from you, asking your questions, subscribing, thumbs up, whatever you're supposed to do out there in the world of social media. And that's not why I'm doing this, to get followers and just launch into that world too much, but I just want to get this information out. And for anyone who is brand new here at this particular episode, welcome. And I'm really glad that you found me and found this podcast. The Awakened Homeowner is where I help homeowners navigate the process of building a custom home or tackling a major renovation without getting blindsided, taken advantage of, or just plain lost somewhere in the middle of the process nobody bothered to explain to them. And I've been in residential construction for over 35 years as a general contractor, and I'm still practicing today. And I've seen what works. I've seen what doesn't. I've seen homeowners get burned by things that were completely preventable. This podcast exists so that doesn't happen to you. We've been deep in a series called Estimating Your Project Cost, and this is episode 4 of that run. Over the course of the last year, I've been doing little mini series all the way back to episode 1, where I started to explain my philosophy for you as a homeowner, how to begin planning a project before you even pick up that phone. But in episode 50, we covered what a real estimate actually is, and why that difference between your budget and a real estimate matters more than most homeowners realize. In episode 51, we covered the timing question, the 2 windows in the design process where you should be obtaining estimates and which one is right for your project. And then in episode 52, we covered the work breakdown structure, the tool that forces your contractors to submit their costs in a format that you can actually compare and understand where your money's really going for each phase or each division of your project. But today we're going to go one level deeper. We're talking about the bid package, what it is, what goes in it, and the exact process for running your estimating phase from start to finish. So let's dig in. So let me give you the single most important framing device for this entire episode, actually for this entire estimating series. The bid package is your accountability mechanism for the design team, for the contractor, and for you as well. Write that down if you want, because everything I'm about to walk you through flows from that idea. So now you can see we've been throwing around this phrase bid package in this series, even prior to this episode. So now let's go ahead and make it concrete. A bid package is the complete compilation of all the work done during the design phase, organized and presented to your contractor candidates so they can actually price your project accurately. Here's what it's not. Just the plans. Most homeowners make this exact mistake. They send plans, sometimes not even a complete set, with a verbal wish list, no format, no cover letter, no specs, and they're confused when estimates come back all over the map. Think about it this way. If your plans are the blueprint for what you're building, the bid package is the blueprint for the bidding process itself. Every element in it has a purpose. Nothing is in there for show. So let's talk about who this document is actually holding accountable. First, your design team. When your architect assembles or co-facilitates the bid package, they are committing to the quality and completeness of those plans and specifications. That's a professional commitment. It changes how actually the package is put together, and it really does matter. Second, your contractor candidates. When a contractor receives a complete professional bid package, they know they're being held to a standard. They know this homeowner is organized. They know their proposal will be compared against others in a format that levels the playing field. How they respond to that, the questions they ask, whether they bother to visit the site, how thorough their proposal is, that tells you a tremendous amount about who you're dealing with before a single dollar changes hands. And then third, you. Here's the thing most people don't expect. The bid package forces you to make decisions. What materials are you specifying? What scope is in? What scope is out? What are you still evaluating? You cannot issue a real bid package until you've done the work, and that's the point. And then there's also this. Incomplete packages attract incomplete contractors. Let me say that again. Incomplete packages attract incomplete contractors. The best builders in any market have their pick of projects. They go where the process is professional. A messy bid package signals an unprepared homeowner, and a good contractor reads that signal really, really fast. All right, so you're sold on why this matters, I hope. Let's open the package and look inside. Here's exactly what a solid bid package contains. We're going to go component by component, and I want you to walk away from this segment with a mental checklist, the kind you can actually use when the time comes to pull this together. There are 5 core categories in a complete bid package, and here they are. Component 1. The cover letter. The cover letter is the piece most homeowners skip entirely, and it's one of the most important things that you'll send. This is your formal invitation to a contractor candidate to provide a proposal. It sets the tone for the entire relationship. A well-written cover letter signals organized homeowner, serious project, professional process. And here's what it includes. A brief description of the project, nothing elaborate, just enough context so the contractor knows what they're looking at. Explicit instructions on how you want the estimate formatted. You're telling them up front, here's the breakdown structure we use, here's how I want costs organized, and we'll get into that more in a few more minutes. And then a hard deadline for the proposal submission. Mean it, and don't let this drag. And here's one thing worth including. Let the contractor know you're working with 2 to 3 candidates, not 7 to 10. This really does matter. A contractor who hears you're getting 7 bids is going to wonder whether it's worth their time. Contractor could spend 40 to 400 hours to estimate a project. And we talked about that in episode 50, and that time is a real investment. And I recommend you go back and listen to that episode, and also the one with Enrique Guzman as my guest. I think that was episode 48, to get inside the minds of contractors so that you can understand how you can attract the best contractors for your project. So when you tell them this, 2 to 3 candidates tells them the odds are reasonable. This homeowner respects my time. I'm going to take this seriously. Also, ask them to confirm receipt and their intent to submit. Radio silence during bidding is a signal. You want to know early if someone's going to ghost you. Component 2 is called the scope of work document. And I've mentioned this numerous times throughout the previous episodes, especially during the design process. This is a written narrative of what you're building and what materials and equipment go into it. Think of it as specs in like plain language. It's organized by category, and it's aligned with the WBS structure, the work breakdown structure that I covered in the previous episode 52, and it goes into the specifics. So, for example, if you're doing a major remodel of a project, meaning the word remodel means you're actually doing structural changes to an existing home and you're possibly adding on to a home, whereas a renovation is really just updating an existing home. There are things that may not necessarily make it onto the plans. For example, you might be doing an addition to a home, but you may require to replace the entire roof on the home, or you may want hardwood floors throughout. But if you aren't specific on the type of hardwood flooring, is it pre-finished, engineered? Is it 3/4 inch thick, 3 inch wide, natural finish? Or whatever you selected, describing what you want for the tile backsplash in the kitchen. It says tile backsplash in kitchen. Or does it say you want a 3x6 subway tile made by Fire Clay manufacturer and gloss white stacked vertically with white grout? The more explicit you can be in your narrative about the scope of work of your project and break it out by category. So there's specifications, meaning the exact make and model of certain things that you want, which could be materials, it could be finished materials, construction materials, but then also any narrative to help the contractor understand how you want that installed, where you want it installed, etc. So the scope of work document all follows the same work breakdown structure. And sometimes it can be a simple sentence or two, or sometimes it could be multiple paragraphs because you're trying to articulate how much work you want done and where. And for example, the demolition category is a good one, explaining to them what you want done and how it impacts the entire home in a remodel project, for example. By the way, this also transfers accountability to the contractor so that they can take responsibility for pricing it out, and you always have something to reference to. If you don't take the time to do the scope of work document, be prepared to accept a lot of liability and a lot of misunderstandings that can occur very quickly and easily on a project. So the more precise the scope of work, the more accurate the estimates. The fewer pricing disputes you'll have with your builder, and the fewer surprises you'll have during construction. And there's something just as important. The scope of work also defines what's not included, exclusions, what the contractor is not responsible for, just as important as what they are responsible for. So a weak scope of work is the single biggest source of change orders and cost surprises down the road. This document is worth the time that you put into it. So component 3, the bid set plans. This is the core document in the bid package, the plans themselves. But there's something most homeowners don't know. The way you title and date that plan set matters is almost as much as what's in it. Have your design team prepare a completed plan set, have them title it bid set, not preliminary, not design development, bid set. That title tells every contractor candidates, these are the plans I'm pricing. These are current. These are what you're building. And this is what you always will reference back to as you're navigating through the estimating process that we're going to keep going through on this episode. The plans should also be stamped not for construction. That might sound counterintuitive, but it's a safeguard. It prevents an outdated set of plans from surfacing during construction, which happens more often than you'd think, and because it can cause real damage when it's done. I mean, I've been on job sites, and in my business, I handled both the design and the construction. So I had a close grip on both aspects. There wasn't a big handoff from design to construction because it was my own company, but it still happened where the plumber showed up with his plans in hand and was about to begin work. And I looked at him, I said, "Where did you get those plans?" He said, "Well, I was given to him by the designer." I said, "When?" I said, "Well, when I first walked the job, 3 months ago." Things had changed from 3 months ago to the day we started construction, and that was a big red flag. And we had to put a lot of processes and systems into place to not let that happen again. So this is a really important part of it. Stamping them bid set, stamping them not for construction. This is kind of like your Bible. This is kind of like your master document that you will use to go through all of the process through working with contractors. So the date, believe it or not, this is crazy, but there's a lot of designers out there that are not disciplined to put dates on their plan sets. And I haven't covered the plan set pages in detail yet. I plan to circle back to that and explain to you what the plan sets are all about, and that'll probably get more into video and YouTube demonstrations of what architectural and structural and mechanical electrical plans look like, what to expect. But in the right-hand lower corner of a plan set is usually the title of the page number, and then somewhere in there, there's usually a date field, or you could call it bid set, and then the issue date. And then you can refer to that for all of the communications you have with your contractors, your subcontractors, your material suppliers. So what I would recommend you do, and the designers that are listening and the architects, there's a whole methodology that I'm sure you're using, or if you're new to the design world, some of the stuff kind of sounds simple, but it's more about discipline than it is some ingenious idea here. But what we would do is we would always list the digital file name as the last name of the client, and then underscore bid set, underscore month, date, year. And that would basically tell you what job it is, what plan set it is, and what date it was issued. So this version control is not really glamorous, but it is critical for you to be able, as a homeowner or a general contractor or an architect, designer, interior designer, to track and be able to refer back to plans when bids start coming in, or when questions come up, or even more fun, when disagreements arise between subs and contractors, or subs and architects, or architects and contractors. So what goes into the bid set? Well, all of it. The architectural pages, the MEP pages, that's the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing pages, the structural pages that are generated usually by a structural engineer, the civil plans, if your project requires them, and I've talked all about this in previous episodes. Everything I've talked about today, I've talked and explained the organization and formatting of architectural plans. It's typical in the industry. This isn't something that I created. It's just letting you know as a homeowner what to expect. So again, architectural pages are your primary pages, which are generated by your designer, your architect, residential designer, and usually the acronyms begin with an A 1.00. And then the MEP pages, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, are either generated by your architect for smaller, simpler projects, or sometimes they're generated by separate consultants, such as a mechanical engineer, a plumbing engineer, or an electrical engineer, or a lighting designer. So you'll have to ask your architect when you get into it, do you do that work yourself? Do we have separate consultants that come in on that? And then the structural pages are often generated by a separate structural engineer consultant that works underneath the architect's umbrella. And these are the pages, and they usually start with an S001 or S100, however that particular consultant uses to organize your plan pages. And this is the bones of your home, the skeleton of your home, and the methods and the instructions and down to nitty-gritty details of how to put your home together that your contractor will really latch onto. Civil plans they're referred to civil plans often, and this is everything outside of the structure. So if you're building a large custom home and you need grading and drainage and driveways and roads and retaining walls, septic systems, think about it like anything outside of the structure that needs to be thought of and designed so that you can achieve accurate pricing. So then there's other things such as the energy pages, the interior design pages are important, any type of fire sprinkler systems. So there's a whole set of pages that go into this that are accompanied by a scope of work document. Now, a lot of times you can get the information that could go on the scope of work document within each of the plan page disciplines. So if you had a lot to talk about in the electrical and lighting, you could have that right on the plan page, but it's often that either decisions hadn't been made at the time the plan pages were generated, or there's just frankly not enough room and it gets really messy. You'll have to talk with your designer to see how they like to structure the scope of work versus the actual visual demonstration on the plan pages. A lot of them do like to focus on doing the plan pages, and that's fine, if you have one central location to go to, but they better be able to specify everything. And I'll get into that when we get into the plan page details. So, and alongside the plans can also come your consultant reports. Now, if you're building a custom home, large, complex, custom home, you could need a geotechnical report, which is a soils report that your foundation contractor will want to understand what they're working with. Geotechnical report mandates how the foundation should be designed based on the soil it's supposed to support the home. And if there's any other consultant that the architect is brought in, those reports should be included in your bid package. You want to make sure as a homeowner that you've given the opportunity for the contractor to fully understand the project. You also want to pass that accountability onto the contractor to make sure that they are held accountable to pricing the project out based on information, frankly, liability. So that you can depend on the estimate that comes into play. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because, frankly, it's just not as common as you'd think to provide a comprehensive bid package to a project. And that goes to a contractor. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A big one is people are in a hurry. A big one is people just frankly don't know. A big one is the architect, or we'll call them residential designers. If you think you got a great deal on your designer, it's not that professional, and they were not able to provide all of the information and the details. There's a variety of reasons why incomplete bid packages go out and then cause all kinds of problems when you go to finalize the contract. And usually you don't find that out until you're under construction. So the day that you title that plan set, bid set, is the day your estimating process really officially begins. All right, let's keep going here. So we're going to be talking about the format. And this is how I've always run my business and how I've presented my proposals to customers, to homeowners. And we're flipping the tables here, and we're going to empower you with a format that you can use to send out for bids. And I'm not going to be able to visually demonstrate that to you, but we're going to talk about it. And then I would recommend, if you're serious, you're at that serious stage of bidding a project and you need a little bit of consultation, I'd welcome you to reach out and we can set up a call and I can help you navigate this, because it does get a little involved and it's a little bit difficult to do on a podcast, but I'm going to give it a shot. So if you caught episode 52, just last week's episode, this should click pretty quick. If you didn't, I'd go back and listen, because what I'm about to say will make a lot more sense with the context. The WBS, work breakdown structure, I didn't invent that term. That's a standard industry term that's used in construction estimating. But the WBS you include in the big package is the format you're asking each contractor to use when submitting their costs. Now, you could use the one that I use, or your architect may have a standard format that they like to use. There's industry standards that can be used. So it doesn't have to be specifically how I do it. I like the way I do it because it breaks each and every category down of construction pretty close to the progression of construction from the day you break ground to the day you put the doorbell on. So that's how and there's probably 40 categories, 30 or 40 categories in between that you would be able to line item compare contractor estimates. And frankly, contractors bid projects this way, but they all each have their own format, some very rudimentary, some very detailed, and the more professional contractors or the more experienced contractors should be able to conform to your requirement so that you can easily compare estimates, because this is probably one of the number one complaints and struggles that homeowners have, is trying to compare contractor estimates. And as you can imagine, the biggest problem is incomplete scope of work, missing details, and that even muddies the water even more. So rather than receiving 3 proposals in 3 completely different formats, one by trade, one by floor level, one in a single lump sum you can't decode, you're telling every candidate up front, here's how I want your costs organized. Break them out by these categories in this order. And this is how you get an apple-to-apple comparison, which is one of the hardest things to achieve, as I've mentioned just a minute ago in the estimating process. But it's also one of the most valuable for you to accomplish if you can. So, including the WBS in your bid package signals professionalism, and a good contractor will appreciate it. A disorganized one might push back on it, or if they feel like they're not in control of the situation, might push back on it. Well, if that's the case, they may not be the best candidate because that sends signals to you of the type of disposition they're going to have when they're challenged on a project. So visualize yourself handing a contractor a complete set of plans, the classic rolled up set of plans that you are envisioning, but probably in a digital format these days. A Word document or a Google Doc or some sort of document with your narrative that's broken out by the same exact WBS categories as the WBS categories that you're requesting pricing from. So you get it. So you've got electrical and lighting. You've got a description of the light fixtures you want, the scope of work. Please upgrade the panel to a 200 amp panel. Please include these list of fixtures. Please install a car charger in the garage or whatever. That should be on the plans, but in any event, and then they'll just directly relate that scope of work. They'll look at the actual electrical plan and they'll put in a cost for all of the electrical work for the entire project. And then the last thing that you would include beyond the scope of work document, the cover letter, the scope of work document, the architectural plans, and all of the consultant's plans, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, structure, and then you would include any supplementary reports that have been generated by consultants such as a soils engineer or others. It could be a civil design as well for your grading and drainage plan. All right, let's move into what I call the 7 steps of the estimating process. So now we're getting into the core part of this episode. I want to walk you through these 7 distinct steps of the estimating process. Some of these will feel intuitive. A couple of them may surprise you. And one of them, step 2, is the rule most homeowners break without even realizing it. And it costs them time, money, and confusion. So let's go through them. Step 1. Publish the bid set. So step 1, have your design team prepare, and I'll use the word publish the bid set. Publishing just means the plans are finalized, titled, dated, and ready to go out the door. And this is a big milestone moment in the world of design as you work towards the end of design into construction documents and getting estimates. And remember, the estimating phase I've spoke about in a few episodes in the recent past. There are different milestones that you can do to obtain estimates in your project. It's not necessarily when all the plans are said and done. There's some budget checkpoints that I've talked about, and there's some actual estimating process that you can do before you complete the plans 100%. There's a reason for that, which you can go back into the episode and listen to that. But this is a really big milestone in the whole project cycle. This big kind of design part is kind of behind you, and now you're moving towards construction. You can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel in the construction world. But this is when the estimating phase officially begins. So publishing the bid set. Step 2, lock it. Lock it down. No revisions during bidding. This is the most frustrating aspect for a contractor, for an architect, for a homeowner. It completely confuses the process if you start changing things during the bidding process. You're going to have changes because you're going to learn things during the bidding process. But the best way to do that, which I'm going to get into, is to manage the changes during the bidding process yourself. Don't share them with anybody that happens to be pricing the project out. So you should really pay a close attention to this one. You don't want to touch the bid set once it's published. And you're gonna want to make some changes. Your designer is going to spot something. The building department is going to send feedback. You're going to have ideas at midnight that feel important. Your contractor is going to find, the contractors that are looking at the plans are going to find problems with the plans. They're going to want to provide input on the plans, even share ideas of how things can be done better, different, cheaper. What you want to do is you want to take those questions down, those concerns down, those changes down, and keep track of those. Write them all down in a log of the things that need to be addressed. So keep a running list on this. And at the end of the bidding process, you'll want to pause, review this list, and make a determination if all of them apply and how to approach them. And here's another thing to keep in mind. When you start getting questions from contractors, subcontractors, material suppliers about the plans of the project, because they will be reviewing the plans in great detail. These are the people you want to pay attention to, the ones that are asking a lot of questions, the ones that are thinking about the details. Keep in mind that these people are looking out for themselves, but they're also looking out for you. So the expectations are being set properly and met properly. If you send out 3 sets of plans and 2 of them are asking questions and one of them you never hear from until the bid comes in the email, and you look at it and it looks like a really attractive price, but you haven't heard boo from them during the bidding process, I do not recommend that you work with that contractor, because what they're doing is they may be thinking that there's things that need to be addressed, but they're not asking, they're not telling, and they're going to wait and ask those questions during construction, and then they're going to charge you change orders to cover that. Key here, though, is do not issue revisions during the bidding process, and here's why. When you revise mid-bid, you introduce confusion. Contractor A is pricing version 1. Contractor B is version 2. Contractor C is pricing something in between because they missed the email. You think of something that you want, you tell one contractor, but you forget to tell the other contractor. The bids come in, one's higher than the other. You think, oh, they're out the door, but they included what you told them and you didn't. And the other guy didn't include because you forgot to tell him or he forgot, so you have to really have discipline to do not make revisions during the bidding process, the actual bidding process. So what happens is now your estimates are worthless. This is another contributor of estimates that you can't compare, that are all over the place, that you can't trust, and just puts you in a really bad spot, and very likely you'll select the wrong contractor with the wrong expectations, and this is how you can help control the process. So the revision round comes later. And that's completely intentional, and it's built into the process. But it happens after you have proposals in hand, not during. Do not change the bid set once it's published. None. 0. Put the changes on a list. Deal with them in the revision round. This is one of the rules that sounds simple, and it still gets broken constantly. So step 3 and 4 here, which is the proposal request and invitations. Step 3 and 4 is issuing the bid package and formally inviting your candidates. Here's a specific thing I want you to do as part of that invitation. Encourage each contractor to visit the project site, even if it's a brand new home and there's nothing to look at except the dirt. And if it's all possible, to meet directly with your design team, with you present if you can. And I know that sounds like a little extra friction to get the process done, but think about it, what that site visit tells you. A contractor who schedules a site visit, who shows up, walks the property, asks questions, meets the architect, is engaged, that's really who you want. One who declines and submits a number without ever seeing the property, that tells you something too. And practically speaking, a site visit gives the contractor fair exposure to site-related conditions that could affect the cost, the slope, the access, existing structures, drainage, distance from utilities. And this is especially important with remodel projects because there's a lot of foreseeable conditions that may be classified as unforeseeable in the world of the designer's mind, but there's nobody better than a contractor to show up and start looking up and looking down and looking around going, how are you going to get that duct over there? Or what did you think about this problem over here that I can see when we go to do the addition? Do you think there's a septic tank out in the back where we're planning to add? Because it looks like there used to be one. And there's just, these guys think of everything because they're the ones that are actually in the trenches doing the work. The architects and designers are not. And not to belittle them, but it's a good combination to have the professional designer, the professional engineers combined with the person that's going to implement their plans before they implement the plans. because you can find out all kinds of stuff. So you want to get these things priced out accurately up front, not discovered mid-construction and presented as change orders like I mentioned. And then step 5, controlling the format. Step 5 is establishing the format for the proposals. This is where that WBS pays off. Rather than accepting, just handing a set of plans, say, give me a bid, and then you get this one big number or a whole bunch of little numbers you got to add up, and they don't add up, and tell them where you want things broken out. And step 6 is one we haven't talked about yet, which is options, alternates, and phasing. So step 6, and this one has its own full segment in a few minutes. So I'll give you the preview here. Pre-identify any portions of the project where you want costs broken out separately. Optional scope items, material alternatives, separate project phases. Informing your contractor about these before they submit their proposals saves an enormous amount of time for both of you. And it also gives you data that you can actually make decisions with. And I'll be coming up with that in detail very shortly. And then step 7, the final step, the revision round. So step 7, once you've received all the proposals and gathered all the input from your contractors, your design team, and the building department, combine it all into one revision package. At this stage of the game, you may, out of all of this process that we went through above in this episode, you may already be ruling out contractors. You may not like the way they responded. You may not the way that they communicated. You may have brought another one in during the process. This is your first filter period, if you will, to weed out the bad and keep the good. But you're going to combine all this into one revision package, and you're going to address the design questions, finalize option decisions, resubmit to your candidates, and then typically the revision narrows from 3 contractors to 2 at this point, or maybe you feel necessary to bring another one in. Not quite there with any of them. But this is the best way to manage this process. Bottom line is you're already starting to feel like who you like and who you don't. And also test them, right? I mean, how vested are they in this? Are they really interested in the project? And how quickly do they respond? How accurate is their revised number? How interested do they appear? These are the data points you'll use when it's time to rank and select, which is what's coming up in episode 54. So that's the 7 steps. Publish, lock it, issue an invite, site visit, control the format, identify options, run the revision round. Run this process correctly, and you are operating a level most homeowners never reach, and frankly, a lot of professionals don't reach. Let me tell you why this matters. The quality of contractor that your process attracts is directly related to the quality of your process. Get it? So the best builders in any market are evaluating you. I do want to dive deeper into options, alternates, and phasing, because this is a really important and valuable exercise to go through, and it benefits all parties. And this is part of the bidding process that most homeowners don't even know really exists, and it's one of the most powerful tools available to you before a single shovel hits the dirt. We're talking about options, alternates, and phasing. 3 things, 3 different purposes, all of them used before the proposals come back. This is how experienced homeowners use the bidding process as a financial planning tool, and not just a price collection exercise. So let's take them one at a time. Options. Options are simple. They're areas or portions of your project where you want a separate cost before you commit to them. So, for example, you've designed a master bathroom model as part of a larger project. Maybe it's a full gut and rebuild, but you're not sure you can justify the cost when everything is done. You ask for the master bathroom project as a separate line item in each proposal. So they will provide you the baseline project with everything that you definitely want, and then they'll have a separate line item that you will create, and my program's going to create for you someday. If I ever get this thing launched, the BuildQuest app, you will create option 1. Master bathroom. Option 2, new flooring throughout the entire house, not just the remodel area. Option 3, I want the cabana out by the pool. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can organize your options, but it's if you tell the contractor this ahead of time, not after the fact, because if you do it after the fact, it can really be frustrating for a contractor because they have to try to extrapolate everything out. All the trades have bid everything as once. They have to pull it back out. It's crazy, crazy amount of work for everybody. So you ask for it as a separate line item in the proposal. And when the proposals come back, you can see exactly what that bath remodel adds to the total. You make a real decision with a real number. I used to do this all the time with my clients, and it really helped people understand where their money's going, because it's just giving people one big lump number. It's just hard for them to understand. And frankly, a lot of people just said, oh, forget it. I don't want to do it. So that's a completely different position than trying to back engineer what to cut after you've already gotten sticker shock on that full number, right? So options let you control the scope after you see what things actually cost, not before you have any data. Alternatives. Alternatives are about materials usually. Your base scope defines, red oak hardwood floors in the primary suite, standard choice, nice finish on budget material. But you've also been looking at walnut. Walnut is stunning. Walnut is more expensive. How much more? You include it as an alternative in the bid. So think about it this way. You already have that component in the base bid. You got to have something. It could be vinyl floor, or it could be, hand scraped walnut floors, but you have to have something. So your baseline bid is the red oak plain Jane floors. You want to know how much more it costs, right, to upgrade to walnut. So you include it as an alternative in the bid. Please provide your base price with red oak and an alternative with walnut. And when the proposals come back, you see the delta difference, and maybe it's $8,000, maybe it's $20,000, whatever. And now you make an informed material decision with real cost data, not a guess, not a Pinterest number. Or some crazy Google number you got trying to search it up yourself. Alternatives are especially useful for finished materials, flooring, cabinetry, countertops, tile, plumbing fixtures, anything where you're weighing options and the cost difference matters. Now, it could also apply, like you may be considering different window quality product, right? You might have baseline the job out at vinyl windows, but you want to understand how much more it's aluminum clad windows. That's another construction material alternative that you could consider too. So be thinking about how you can manage the budget by declaring these options and alternatives. And the last one is phasing. So phasing is about breaking the project into pieces, right? And understanding what each piece costs independently. So you've designed a new home, let's say a new home office addition at the front of the house and a new primary suite addition at the rear. And you love both, but you're not sure you can finance both simultaneously. You ask your contractor, please price these as two separate phases. Phase one, the office addition. Phase two, the primary suite. And when proposals come back, you can see what each phase costs on its own. And maybe you do both, and maybe you defer one, but maybe the numbers tell you something about how you want to sequence construction. Phasing is also a protection against the most expensive thing you can do in construction, making scope changes after the project starts. Know the cost of each major piece before you begin, then make your decisions. And then here's a bonus. Letting your contractors know that phasing is part of the conversation helps them understand the full scope of your project. It may influence how they approach their relationships with their subcontractors. It may influence their pricing, but it's all useful. So options let you control the scope after you see the real numbers. Alternatives let you make material decisions with real cost data. And phasing lets you understand each major area independently. 3 tools, use all of them. Now let's talk about the most underutilized resource you have during this entire process, your architect or your design team. You really don't have to run this bidding process alone. In fact, I'd argue you probably shouldn't. And here's why. The person on your team who is the most intimate with your plans and specifications at this stage is your architect or your designer. Their knowledge of your project is unmatched right now. They designed it, they spec'd it, they know where every decision was made, and they know what decisions haven't been made and why. And architects can assist in facilitating the estimating process, assembling the bid package, issuing it, fielding technical questions from contractors, and reviewing the proposals when they come back. Now, this typically falls outside the standard design scope of work for a contractor, and a lot of them will call this construction administration. Even though you haven't begun construction, sometimes they will classify this under the construction administration heading, which will probably be a whole nother episode. And it usually means a little bit additional costs, but it's worth discussing with your architect up front so that you see that there are no surprises. And here's my position on the cost. The added cost of involving your architect in this phase very often pays back through more thorough proposals, fewer misunderstandings, and a higher caliber of contractor engagement. And here's the thing that most homeowners really don't expect. When contractors know an architect is involved, when they see a complete, professionally assembled bid package that clearly reflects expert oversight, their mindset does shift. They know they're being held accountable by someone who understands construction documents at a professional level, someone who can have an intelligent conversation about technical details, someone who can read through noise and ask the right questions. Your architect projecting credibility changes how contractors respond. That said, I want to be specific about my recommendation here. Don't hand off the process entirely unless you happen to be an extremely busy individual and you have an extreme amount of trust with your architect. But here's why. The estimating process is also your first real opportunity to evaluate your contractor candidates directly, how they respond to your invitation, what questions they ask, whether they visit the site, how fast they communicate, how detailed their proposal is. All of that is data that you can't really get secondhand. If your architect runs the entire process without you in the room, you lose the direct window into each contractor's character and approach. The recommendation is this: team up, stay involved, let your architect's expertise and credibility lift the quality of the process. Let them handle the technical conversations, but keep your eyes open, keep your ears to the ground, because how a contractor behaves during bidding is a preview of how they behave during construction. That's the segue into what's coming into episode 54. Which is how you take all of these proposals and actually rank and evaluate your contractors. Here's what we've covered today. The bid package is your accountability mechanism for your design team, for your contractors, and for you. It contains 5 core components: the cover letter, the scope of work with specifications, the work breakdown structure, the formally titled bid set plans, and your consultant reports. You run the estimating process in 7 steps, and the cardinal rule is lock the bid set the day you publish it and do not touch it during the bidding process. Layer in options, alternates, and phasing to turn this process into a financial planning instrument. And team up with your architect. Their presence and credibility change the quality of what you receive back. And, as I mentioned many times, is if you're just, at the early stages of your project and you want a tool, a vehicle to help you manage the entire planning process of the project, I welcome you to go to buildquest.co, and you'll see on the homepage at the bottom where you can sign up for the beta test when it comes out, which is probably a few more months out. I've been doing change orders with my developers to make sure that I've got you covered. So here we go. If this episode helped you, please share it with someone who's heading into the estimating phase right now. That's the homeowner who needs this most. And I do really welcome your questions on Instagram or Facebook or good old email. All the links will be in the show notes, and I try to read every message, and I'm looking for as many people that want to kind of engage on this process as we're doubling our listenership every week, which is crazy. And then coming up in episode 54, we're going to be moving into the revision round and contractor ranking, and you've got the estimates in hand. Now what? How do you evaluate them, compare them intelligently, and make a decision you can feel confident about? That's what's going to be next. So season 2 is officially underway, and as always, I'm Bill Reed, your home building coach, and I'm here to enlighten, empower, and protect you. Now let's go make it happen.